Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. I thought I would mix this video in here while I'm continuing to do your mysteries and oddities suggestions, mainly because this one was suggested on the mysteries and oddities side, but after reading the information involved, I thought it would fit better on the Cryptids and Monsters playlist. Plus, this is a really fascinating entry. That's why I love doing these videos, because otherwise I never really would have heard of this information, so it's great to showcase it here. It has to do with a creature, some type of being that apparently haunted an apartment building and a stove located within that apartment. And there's apparently either misconceptions associated with this being, whether it was truly a cryptid or it could have been more on the lines of a paranormal, like a spectral or ghost, or it could even have been a prankster. In fact, there's even an angle associated with a young girl who was apparently slandered with regards to this case. So lots of interesting stuff to share here. In fact, you're looking at a representation of it now. Has an interesting name too. It's known as the Zaragoza Goblin. So let's go ahead and let's share this info here, and then I'd love to hear what your thoughts are as to what this creature truly was. So here's essentially what happened. You have to go back to September 27th, 1934, there in Zaragoza, Spain, hence the name associated with Zaragoza Goblin. And if you go there to a location, an apartment building at a street called Gascon Goder Street, if you go to that apartment on the second floor, or at least when that apartment was existing at that time, there was a family called the Palazone family. And on that infamous date, that's when out of the blue, all of a sudden, at this pictured stove that you're looking at here, that's when there was these strange voices, like in other words, one voice, but different interpretations of it that would come out. In other words, it would scream, it would laugh, it would talk, it would mumble. It would basically be as if somebody was in that stove talking to whomever was there in the room, or just basically talking to themselves. And it was coming straight out of that stove slash chimney. The way that chimney was built, it was actually connected to other units, and they would all go together up towards the roof. So the idea was that whatever was there, at least based on interpretations, was in that particular area of the stove, because it would have been hard for it to be located anywhere. Otherwise, the voice could have been considered very far away or very hard to hear. But no, it was crystal clear, at least with regards to that particular stove. And then when that happened, obviously that Palazone family was freaked out. This was a voice that was now talking to them. They had no idea what it was. They had no idea, who it could be from, whether it was truly a prankster doing this or if there was some other type of supernatural stance associated with it. They even began asking their neighbors for help. Some of the people that would come by, they would hear the voice, which by the way was a male type voice, and this voice would also talk to them. And in some cases, they would be mischievous things, like almost like prankful type statements. In other cases, it was actually answering questions that the people there would ask it. Nobody would be able to see, though, what this thing was. It never made its presence known, but it definitely had its voice, and it would always talk to them. And in particular, it definitely enjoyed talking to the daughter associated with that family. In fact, her name was Pascuala Alcocer. She was the young maid associated with that family. And so Pascuala definitely became a favorite of whatever this voice was. Eventually, somebody started asking or thinking that this might have been a duende. If you haven't heard about those duendes, those are those mischievous little elf slash goblins that are pretty popular in Latin American cultures. In fact, I did a video on it a couple of years back. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I'll include the link for it below. That way you can catch up with regards to that cryptid and then see, how closely it relates to this. But ever since when that happened, then that's when it stuck. So the Duende version in English is more on the lines of goblin, hence it became the Zaragoza Goblin. And by that point, the fame associated with this voice started to grow even more. more onlookers came out because they heard about this mysterious voice coming from the stove. That's when they would come by and they would visit that apartment building, or they would try to at least. There would be people that would be outside as well. People would try to ask it questions. There was even, I read somewhere, involving a radio station that wanted someone to be able to hook up some kind of microphone or something there to try to capture the voice and then broadcast it on a radio wide basis. I don't know if that was ever truly done, but otherwise it was something that still was attempted. And then also the voice just continued with regards to its own presence. It just did so for a long time. In fact, I think it was for a couple of months that this was associated in the beginning, and then it just continued for maybe about 6 months total. More on that here in just a minute as to its quote-unquote ending. But the hysteria associated with the voice just grew more and more. At a certain point, there were actually hundreds of people that would be outside the apartment complex. All of them wanted to have a chance to hear the voice. Who knows how they would hear it from outside, but maybe they were waiting to get turns to go inside, or maybe people would be hoping that this voice was loud enough that they could hear it from outside. Police started to get involved too because the family wanted answers. To them, this was not something that was funny. This was something that was truly causing misery within their life, because this voice was not letting them have peace. It would just absolutely just continue to just taunt them and talk to them, and in some cases do maniacal laughs. You can imagine at certain points that you would get tired of it and almost scared of it, because it seems to be enjoying the misery that it's causing. So the police began their investigation. They would also ask questions, and it would answer those questions too. Whatever this Zaragoza goblin was, it didn't care who it was talking to, even police. That's when they would decide, hey, this is truly real. Eventually, it got to the point where things took a more serious turn. Finally, police took another step where them, along with some architects and some workmen, went into the building to try to get this done once and for all. From their angle, they were thinking it was a prankster, that obviously someone was on the rooftop somewhere, in the cellar somewhere maybe on the basement area, who knows where, but they were up there or down somewhere trying to project their voice and then obviously enjoying all this pranking stuff. And so they actually evacuated the entire building. Nobody was in there. Nobody was there, and the police made sure that there was a perimeter done to ensure that nobody could go inside while they began a formal investigation. And so only they were inside, and then there was some investigators, and I think even a doctor there too. But it was still answering. It was still doing so. In fact, at one point, when one of the workers there, one of the workmen, tried to check out the chimney and tried to see, if maybe somebody could squeeze in, something along those lines, that's when the voice answered, "You need not trouble. The diameter is just 6 inches." And he was correct. Whoever this goblin was said the diameter to the exact T. And so when they realized that obviously nobody could squeeze into something like that, it was something else entirely different that could be there. And so at a certain other point, that's when doctors and psychologists were brought in. Even a priest was brought in who tried to spray the area with holy water. This seemed to cause some change within the voice, because now it spoke more, quote unquote, incessantly. So it even started talking even more like it was either angered or irritated at the fact that somebody would try to do something holy like this. And so eventually that's when the mayor decided to step in. Here's why I was mentioning earlier that there was a young girl who was actually slandered because of it. Because of the hysteria involved with the crowds, the family that were probably losing their minds, the police that were just getting irritated about things. That's when this mayor decided, the governor of Zaragoza decided that was it. They stated, and they came up with an official answer. They stated that young maid, the very one that this goblin essentially had a favor for, that she was the perpetrator, that she was doing something that was called, quote unquote, unconscious ventriloquism. That's right. You heard that right. Apparently, they believed, and obviously, this was something that just seemed like out of the blue. They just wanted some answer done to get rid of this madness, even if it meant somebody innocent being hurt. They decided that she was causing this. Obviously, she wasn't. She was not even in the areas at certain times that this goblin voice was being heard. She was far away in another part of town. But they decided that was the official answer. The investigations were closed. And so because of it, just like that, Pascuala Alcocer became almost a pariah. People started blaming her for this voice, and she had to actually leave the city. She returned back to her hometown because everyone there thought that she was the guilty party. But lo and behold, something interesting happened. At that point, that's when things kind of went back to normal. Even though there was a brief period where the voice disappeared and then came back, it even said at one point something along the lines of, I'm back, like you can't get rid of me type of situation. It even said at a certain point that I'm coming when it came to taunting the police. Eventually, though, it actually disappeared. The voice was gone, and then there was no further indications as to anyone else hearing from it afterward. There were some ghostly sounds that people heard within the apartment complex, but nothing along the lines of that official Zaragoza goblin voice. So it had left, it had gone, and it had not returned. And if you're wondering what happened to the apartment complex, in 1977, it was actually demolished. There was a whole new building set built. In fact, you're looking at it now, and even then, it's still nicknamed as the Goblin Building. But there are no indications that this goblin voice has been back within that new building itself. But that's pretty much it. That's everything associated with this Zaragoza goblin. How about that? Very interesting case. So here you have something that could be a duende, could be another form of cryptid, could be something supernatural, or could have been an innocent girl or another prankster altogether. We don't know, because whatever type of answers were there or could have been there went once that goblin left, and then of course once the building was demolished, then the actual stove itself was demolished as well. So all that information is just gone. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are associated with it, and the idea that if it truly was a duende, it's a perfect example of a mischievous type of creature playing another set of pranks with the people that it's involved with. But again, that's pretty much it. If anybody lives in that area, by the way, in Zaragoza, Spain, has more info on the local side, then please let me know. How awesome would it be to be able to visit that building, even though it's not the same building as the actual other building? Can you imagine if you could find the closest approximation associated with that apartment complex and then be able to walk around that spot and then try to see or hear if something is there as well? All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.